Well, we're back again on Victorious Friday. I have an exciting guest for you today, as I normally say. I'm just thrilled to be sitting down and having conversations with some of the thought leaders out there in our society and our nation. And today's topic is one that's near and dear to my heart as we talk about really self care and wellness. What does that look like in your life? And so today, who's joining us is Dr. Jennifer Lundgren. She's now a good friend. I'm getting to know her. She's an official, family and marriage licensed therapist, but she has reminded me to let you know that her official title is mom. And so, welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Terence. I'm just really excited to be here, and I'm really just grateful to have this conversation with you.
Well, we are excited as well. I know you have an exciting book that's out. We're gonna get to that called A Guide to Mental and Emotional Wellness. I'm excited. I have my copy and I'm kind of going through it and you know what? I have to get an autograph copy. So I got an
Sure, I
official
can
copy.
send that over. Yes.
Come on, come on. You know I need it. So here's the idea. I'm reading studies today, and I'm sure that you're seeing it that our society, regardless of the age group, but especially our young folks, they're being overwhelmed with, and really some would say on the brink of burnout, the brink of anxiety, stress, depression, all of these things, and back, years ago, people seeking health care and wellness and therapists was kind of a taboo, right? It was
Mhm.
like, boy, don't talk about that. That's personal. That's within the family and
Yep.
so forth. But more and more, we see these issues, especially coming out of the pandemic. It is really reaping havoc on our young people in our society. And I'm seeing numbers, regardless of age group, increase dramatically. And I'm
Mm.
sure that reason and many more is why you wrote the book, A Guide to Mental and Emotional Wellness, and much more. But what I want to do before we jump into that, I want to talk about you and get to know you a little bit better. My
Sure.
understanding, you're married, you have four kids, two boys, two girls. Tell me about that, and then tell me about the early years. How did you grow up? What was your family environment like? And just share that help the audience to get to know you personally in a way
Sure.
that we can connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm kind of in the thick of parenting right now. I have my oldest is 9. He's in 3rd grade. His name is Jack. My second daughter is in 2nd grade. She's 7, Kate. And then I have a rambunctious 4-year-old Anna, and then baby Henry. He's our toddler. He'll be 2 on Saturday, actually. So I'm married. We live in Mankato, Minnesota, and we're very involved with our church. We have friends who all go to church. We hang out a lot with our friends. That's a really important thing. My parents are still married. They live in town as well. So that's just kind of a snapshot of our life. We're in a busy season, as you can imagine, and just kind of navigating our careers as well as our family and our kin and our friendships and things like that. So growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom until I was in 4th grade, and she's a teacher. So she was a teacher at the elementary school where I went, and my dad is an art professor. So I think that's kind of unique because both of my parents had summers off, which was really important for our childhood because we spent our childhood at my grandparents' cabin. It was very sort of free range, very unplugged, no TV, no computers, no iPads. We literally just swam and explored and played outside, and we were very creative. And my dad paints every day. So that's just a unique thing now, kind of looking back. I thought it was super normal back then to pose for paintings and to see your dad, at the cabin. He paints from life. He's an oil painter, just painting nature and painting scenery and telling stories through art. So that was a big part of my upbringing as well, is storytelling. My dad told us stories every night. So he made up these characters named Henry and Steppen, and every single night for probably 10 years, we were told about a 30-minute story by our dad. And also, getting into mental health and growing up now and reflecting back, I understand just how powerful and meaningful that was. It was just a really beautiful way. He would really like infuse struggles that we were going through and just current issues and kind of developmental things through this narrative of these animals who lived in Arktown. And we all tell him that he needs to publish this now, but just having my parents are high school sweethearts. They've been married since they've been dating since they were 16. They're now almost 70. So I think that was a pivotal part of my upbringing, is just seeing this really beautiful example of a Christian marriage. So I have one brother, one sister. I'm a youngest child, and that's kind of what it was like for us growing up. And I would say, it's not all, just rose colored glasses either. I think we still struggled with health issues and loss and grief and death. But my home was a really safe, beautiful, wonderful place that I appreciate so much more now as a parent. And my sister, I'm close with my siblings still. My sister has 3 little kids, and we talk every day. And just kind of navigate this season of our adulthood together too.
Yeah. And then, you became a licensed marriage and family therapist. Talk to me about that journey. How did you kind of get on that journey, and what does that look like for you in your life?
Yeah. So it's almost amusing when I think about my career trajectory, because I had no plan. Like, I'm a millennial. I just went to, it's a very liberal arts education. I was like, I like psychology, so I'll study it. I'll take painting and literature and film studies and English and writing. And I feel like students nowadays are much more focused with their areas of study, but not me. Just very all over the place. I loved psychology though, and I love people. I love studying people and talking to people, and I love hearing their stories as well. I love helping them. So I realized really that's where my heart was, and that's also where my skill set was. So I actually went straight through to college for 10 years. I got my master's in mental health, and my doctorate is in counselor education. So I was a doctor at age 28, and I got married the summer between my master's and doc program. And then I had my first son the last year of me writing my dissertation. So I
Wow.
graduated on Mother's Day with, I think, an 8-month old or something like that, and was a doctor. And I've always been a mental health therapist, and I've always seen a caseload of clients. And then I started teaching, I think, when I was 29, and kind of have always taught and then saw clients on the side, because it's really important for me to be in the trenches and in the field. And now I teach students how to become counselors, to work with people with addiction and mental health issues. So that's kind of how I came to where I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am. And it's
And
just
what are
very
you seeing? What are
meaningful.
you seeing today, Dr. Lundgren? What are you seeing? We've seen a spike, obviously, in this area of anxiety and stress and depression and things of that nature. What do you think are causing these stressors?
I think it's a lot of things. It's a macro level perspective as well as an individual perspective as well. I technology is a huge driving factor though. And I think I've thought about this a lot, and it's just this kind of constant exposure to information. And we call it almost like an infodemic. We have constant 24/7 access. And what that does, though, the important part of it is the pattern of how it activates our stress response. That's what's critical to understand, is the cortisol, the stress hormone that's released when we're perceiving threat, when we're stressed, is kind of constantly being activated when we're hooked up to our phones 24/7. And I think that's such a new trend, even within the last 10 years. That's really the rise of the smartphone, is when we've seen the rise of anxiety. And then there's a lot of other sort of, the fabric of our society, and people, the tribes disbanding, and people not living near family and not having as much of a sense of community, and just kind of living in isolation, not being involved in the church, and kind of everyone is living on their own, kind of in their house, hooked up to technology. And I think that's just really where we're seeing these poor outcomes in mental health.
Yeah. Well, technology is here to stay. There's some good, there's some bad, there's some challenging things. What boundaries and how can we put boundaries around technology for our young kids, especially? And, how do we manage that process? Obviously, there's some good from technology, but there's certainly some challenges from it, like anything. How do we put, as parents, how do we put boundaries around technology for our children?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's so important. I think as parents, modeling good boundaries, because we
Mhm.
can't say no iPad for you, but we're staring on our phones, completely distracted from our kids all night. I think it's being very just intentional and proactive of what do we value as a family, what's reasonable, and then how do we set up systems that really help us stay within those parameters. So for my kids, it's very, very strict. Our TV is in our basement, kind of even just setting up your environment. Like our iPads and phones are not readily available. They're not just out on our coffee table. Our TV's in our basement, and it's very much like this privilege comes after these other things are fulfilled. We watch one movie a week. And we've just been very strategic about how we kind of implement that. The other thing is just for ourselves. I mean, I have found myself like even Facebook. When I was writing my dissertation, it's such a distraction of like, I want to avoid this work. I'm going to go over here instead to avoid this. And I was like, no, I'm wasting so much time. I'm cutting this off until I finish my dissertation. That's been over 10 years and I haven't gone back since. So just having a discussion about it, having your kids understand why you are having these rules in place, and then just modeling it, I think are kind of the best strategies, but it's hard. And I think the real challenge is when technology is used as a coping skill, as a coping
Mm,
mechanism to
yes.
deal with anxiety or boredom or depression. And, even in my own life, I've seen my tech time goes up if I'm more stressed. It's like that report that comes out every week of how much time you spent on your phone. I've noticed that pattern. So just understanding that it's a very powerful coping mechanism that's not necessarily beneficial for your mental health, and just knowing that it's not a benign thing. There's a lot of brain chemistry that's rewired when we're kind of constantly checking and looking up to hundreds if not thousands of times a day.
Mhm. Yeah, that is so powerful. Well, today we're talking with Dr. Lundgren and some of her credentials, a doctor of education that she has received. She has done supervisory work as well at Minnesota State University. She has a Master of Science in Mental Health Consulting from Minnesota State University as well. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's a nationally certified counselor with NCC. She's on board certified credentials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on, but I list those simply because we're talking with an expert here, and more importantly, for kids and challenging her all the way as mom to live this out. She has written an amazing new book called A Guide to Mental and Emotional Wellness, subtitled Biblical Wisdom, Practical Principles, Clinical Insight. I like to turn to your book now and talk to us about what was the inspiration behind the book, and give me a big overview of the book, and then we'll dive into some of the topics.
Sure. Well, to be very frank with you, I would say the inspiration is that I needed this for myself. I needed this for my own mental health because I remember very distinctively it was like August of 2019. I was about to go back to work after a maternity leave with my third baby, and I just felt like this crushing weight on my chest and all of this anxiety and this like fear of like, how am I going to do this all? I'm seeing clients. I'm on a tenure track position, which is, in academia, it's like a lot of work to become tenured. And also having three little kids at that time of like, I can't do this all. And I need to do something differently. Because the other thing about that, I'm like, I just don't want to live in survival mode. I don't want to just always feel like I'm just getting through to the next thing and just kind of hanging on until the next holiday or deadline or event is over. I'm like, how do I do this well, do this wholeheartedly? Like I could do less or I can do things differently. So that's when I just started researching what are strategies for emotional wellness? Like, what is self-care? How do we engage in these activities without feeling overwhelmed by that, even in and of itself? So a big part of it is it's not just about me. I also was doing this for my students, for my clients, of how do I serve the people that I'm serving more effectively? And then I started teaching about it. And this was pre-COVID. And I applied to this conference in April of 2020. I applied in October, so before COVID happened. And it was something like deconstructing self-care, supporting people in a weary world. And from that presentation on, I've just been leading workshops and seminars and going to businesses and schools and parent groups and churches and talking about these strategies that I've researched. And the other interesting thing about it is when I started kind of comparing it to what is in the Bible and the biblical wisdom that we have, all of the evidence and the science was already found in the Bible. And I just thought that was so fascinating of like, we already have access. We don't need empirical studies to necessarily validate this, but they were so aligned that I developed presentations, the same topic, but then using scripture and using God's word to really emphasize these points. So for me as a Christian and also as a professor, kind of working in the psychology world and the Christian world, it was such a just amazing blending of the wisdom and of the evidence. And that is how the book came about, is from all of these trainings, the book kind of just was written down. I already had all the material, and I just love the potential impact of it. I feel like it's a beautiful way to reach a lot more people than people in my seminar rooms or in a training that I lead.
Yeah. Well, let's jump right in. I looked at I believe it's the second chapter. It talks about what is self-care and why does it matter? Let's tackle that question.
Sure.
Or, well,
It's
two questions,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like self-care is kind of a term that people are like, ugh, like, no, stop telling me to do more. Stop telling me to go to the gym. Like, I have so much to do. Don't tell me to try, celery juice or kale smoothies or something like that. Like, that's not, I am just trying to make it through. So a lot of people are very defensive to this conversation at all. And I think sometimes self-care is like, well, that's selfish, that's extravagant. It's something I'll do down the road if my kids are all in school or all out of the house. Or people also say it's almost like I'll have 4 drinks for self-care instead of one, or I'll binge watch a show until 2 a.m. for my self-care. So it's either kind of thought of as not available, or it's almost like a rationalization of maybe some not so healthy coping mechanisms. So that's sort of what it's not. And from my definition, what it is, it's this very intentional, proactive activity of developing strategies to preserve your well-being and in multiple determinants of health, and for the purpose of kind of sustaining yourself in whatever you're doing, specifically if you serve a lot of people. So a few things about it. It's proactive. It's not, overspending and then saying it was self-care. It's also very fluid because our needs and who we are ebb and flow as we grow and change. So it's a process that is kind of always revisited with curiosity, because what we did in college or pre-divorce or pre-kids was different than what we need now. And then again, it's on multiple determinants of health. So it's not just working out, it's not just meditating, it's also, nourishing your relationships and nourishing your mind and your emotions.
Mm.
So I say that not to make people feel overwhelmed of like, oh, now I have to do all of this. But
Mm.
it's really about understanding the holistic nature of it. And I think it matters because if you are well, the work that you do will thrive and you'll have such a more powerful impact and a way to reach other people. And the
Mhm.
people, your children, your spouse, your clients, your coworkers, everyone will benefit in your life if you are well. And I think that's kind of the mission, is how do we help support everyone to feel better and to kind of have this foundation of well-being so they can serve more fully.
Yeah. Dr. Lundgren, when does it come to the point that we've done and tried all that we know how to do, but we still fall within this state of depression, anxiety due to stress or whatever reasons? Uh, at what point is it that we just surrender it all and say, this is beyond my capabilities, this is beyond my mental abilities. I need a higher power in my life to take
Yeah.
control. What would you say about that?
I would say that that happens to me all the time of like, I can't handle this all. It's still like that story that I told, I still feel that. And I think, as Christians, the beauty in that is that we don't have to do more and try more things and fix it ourselves. Is that we have our Heavenly Father and we have the Bible. And, hopefully we have a Christian community to uplift us. We're not in this by ourselves and we're not in it for us either. So I think that surrendering is like, I can't do this alone. I do need a higher power. I do need Christ and I need my faith to know that's where my true healing is found. But that happens to me all the time of I don't know how to solve this issue. I need to pray. I need to reflect. I need to discern and to just kind of take a step back and not feel the pressure to do it by myself.
Yeah. But there are some what I call rhythms of life that we can actually put in place to help us in this process. What would you recommend in terms of some of those rhythms? You know,
Sure. Yeah. In like rhythms could be synonymous with systems or habits, perhaps.
mm-hmm.
I would say rhythms of connection is really important. So just even simple things like how you greet your kids and spouse in the morning, or how you connect with coworkers, just taking any sort of time of solitude and reflecting on your day and maybe coming to the Lord in prayer or really being intentional with what your priorities are that day and kind of just having this time to yourself to ground yourself. I would also say rhythms of health are super important. So whatever you need to do to get adequate sleep, to nourish your body, to stay hydrated, that is so foundational. And that's so tied into mental well-being as well. And the other thing too, if you are trying to change those rhythms, to do it really simply, to do it really, really by 1% in small shifts, because it's amazing how those things really add up. But I would say physical health critical. I would say connecting with the people in your life critical. And then just connecting with self, with God, and just kind of checking in. How am I doing today? How am I feeling today? What might I need today? And how do I serve today? Asking yourself some good questions too, instead of the alternative is just rushing through an autopilot and then playing whack-a-mole with all the stuff on your calendar, rushing home, figuring out what to air fry, doing anything you need to do to get to the kids in bed and crashing on the couch, which happens some days as well. But I think those rhythms have this intentionality and this kind of, I don't know, for planning, this kind of awareness of this is who I am, this is how I want to show up today, and this is how I can be the most impactful.
Wow. I you don't realize this, but we just Victoria's family just finished writing, and we'll soon publish within the next week a weekly rhythms guide, and we talk about you nailed it right there, intentionality, connection. We've added commitment, commission, the serving part. It's not all about you; it's greater than you. Uh, Reflection, rest. I mean, you
Wow.
I mean, we could have written the book together around this. So, boy, I don't know what led me to that question, but I'm glad I asked it because it was so
Sure.
fun. Well, I want to get to some final remarks from you, um, uh, and you can go anywhere in the book that you like, and point out any key factors, any key topics within the chapters that you like to emphasize to encourage, one, to inform, and secondly, to encourage and inspire our listeners today?
Sure. One thing that I want to speak to that I'm very passionate about, I'm biased because I'm a therapist, but just emotional health. I think that's something in my clinical work, in my teaching, in my personal life. I think a lot of people just don't do it well. I don't feel like I was ever taught how to really do it well, but just to kind of nourish our emotions. I think overall emotions kind of get written off as being flaky, as being fake, as being dramatic, and they're not kind of honored in the same way that logic and reasoning is honored. But it's fascinating how much emotions play a role in our learning, in our decision making, in our connecting with people, in teaching. Students don't learn if they're bored, if they don't feel connected to the subject matter. So I just think kind of honoring emotions and understanding them and sharing them is a really important message that I want to give to your listeners, especially for men too. Because I feel like if it's like, oh, I'm a very emotional person, you'd be like, ugh, like I don't trust you to be my leader. But if you have this like emotional intelligence, you're much more able to have empathy for other people. You're much more able to feel better and to feel like integrated and congruent with yourself. You're much more able to serve your family and to kind of co-regulate your emotions with the emotions of others, which is something that we all do. We're all influenced by the emotions of the people around us. It's how we're wired as humans. So I think just kind of giving emotions a platform and doing some of that work is really important, and that's something that I want to share, inspire, whatever that might look like.
No, I think that's very important, especially for men. It takes us a year just to say our name and be able to have some type of transparency and authenticity. I think we're getting better, but we still have a little work. We're work in progress, with so to speak. But I think that's so important. EQ, emotional intelligence, is just as much as important as intellectual intelligence and approach. But that's for a lot of men. We've kind of grew up with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be that way, to be strong, to be this and to be that. But in reality, our connection starts very much at an emotional, very personal level. A lot of times, and I always say that people want to know how much you care before they want to know how much you know. And so we want to show that as well. Well, as we wrap up, we're talking again to Dr. Jennifer Lundgren. She's written an amazing book called A Guide to Mental and Emotional Wellness. Where can we get a copy?
Yeah, you can get a copy at timeofgrace.org. It's available on their website, and that's where you can find it.
Awesome. And I always say to my listeners, don't just buy one copy, buy 10 copies. Keep one for yourself and distribute them to family and friends, business associates, or whatever, to let them know how much you care. So, again, A Guide to Mental and Emotional Wellness. Amazing book, great read. Let me recommend that. Dr. Lundgren, I like to leave this last section 1 minute or 2 minutes or so, and give you an open floor. Take it wherever you would like to take it to encourage our listeners, our parents, our grandparents, our young millennial parents, etc. How would you encourage us in this area? Anywhere you want to take it, I give you the last word.
Sure, thank you. Well, one thing I would say is if you are struggling, it's okay. It's okay to not feel well. It's okay to struggle with depression, anxiety. And instead of judging yourself or shaming yourself or criticizing yourself, berating yourself, to really notice how you feel with curiosity and to use that as a signal, to use your emotions as a signal. What are they guiding you towards? They can guide you back to Christ. They can guide you to more connection. They can guide you to more rest. They can guide you to service. But I think a lot of people don't feel well and then they judge themselves for it and then they feel worse. And it kind of becomes this, they're trapped in this cycle or in this snowballing of emotions and judgments and criticism. Another takeaway is if you are struggling, it's okay to ask for help. I think a lot of Christians like feel guilty and they don't want to burden their loved ones, and they're so in tune to the suffering of others. They think my problems don't matter. You know, they have so much else to deal with too. But when you can confide your issues with someone that cares about you, you're really helping them support you. And you're helping them become the best version of themselves. And you're helping develop intimacy. And I think that's a really powerful thing, that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to need help. It's okay to not be okay. And when you can share that, that's when a lot of healing occurs, because your tribe can band around you then. And to share what you feel with nuance. So to develop the ability to have a vocabulary to say, you know what, I'm feeling very depleted. I'm feeling demoralized. I'm feeling really disappointed. I'm feeling despair. Like a lot of times we label all of those words as stress, but the more carefully you can nuance your emotions, it helps your brain know how to cope with it, and it helps the people in your life know how to support you. So I guess in summary, it's just, if you're struggling, it's okay to ask for help. Doesn't mean you're weak. It takes a lot of courage to do so. And, you know, whether you need therapy or whether a book like this can support you, whether your community can support you, it's okay. And just knowing that the more that you can nourish your well-being, the better you'll be able to serve. And that's what I want. It's not selfish to take care of yourself. It's wise, because when your cup is full, it's going to overflow to everyone in your life. And the world needs that right now. It just needs the light. It needs a light of Christians, and it needs people to be well, to help serve, and to help encourage those around us.
Well, thank you so much. I'm encouraged by that because it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Uh, it's okay to not be okay. We don't have to be okay all the time. Sometimes we have challenges in our life, and that's okay. What a powerful word. Thank you again so much. I'm going to end it with Jennifer. And because now we've moved from acquaintance to friend. I know you now. You're part of Victoria's family and part of the champions within our group. Honored to have you here today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and time.
Thank you, Terence. Thank you so much.